So hello everyone to this week's Frostbook devlog / showcase. Spent most of the week experimenting and getting used to Godot, so there isn't much to show here. Except I somewhat made this sky shader, you'll see in a minute. Basically, Godot allows you to copy and paste their built-in shaders, which is really cool. So, and with that I managed to switch their scattering calculations to a texture lookup. You can see here. Here you have texture, and you can just do this something, and then I added some extra stylized settings, and I got this. Not quite perfect, but I'll fix it later. Like, it has some issues when the sun is facing like 90 degrees up. For some reason the sky turns white. Not quite sure why that happens, but anyway, what I want to talk about in this video is a general game idea, and I have two questions that I want to hear your opinions on. So let's just get started. Obsidian. This is basically everything I want to talk about in this video. This is the game idea. So basically it's going to be a game where the player is completely defenseless and is overpowered by the creatures of the world. The player has to use the procedurally generated environment and has to build traps in order to avoid these creatures. The player doesn't have any weapons such as swords or bows, although they can catch fish using nets and collect fruit to eat. Maybe they can use the bows later on if traps are way too painful to set up, which wouldn't really surprise me. I mean, bows are like great because you can just use them for smaller creatures and they wouldn't work on large ones. So yeah, the player would also have abilities with their right hand that would allow them to speed up the growth of plants and heal maybe. It also allows them to tame creatures, use them to their advantage. Basically, the player itself won't have any weapons, but they can tame creatures and use those creatures as weapons, basically. Tamed creatures require food, otherwise they will leave after the player goes to sleep or just during daytime, because there will be a day-night cycle thing, which I just showed. Some tamed creatures can also be used for transportation, basically like a horse and stuff like that. There will also be some flying creatures, which can give you the ability to fly with them, I guess. The player's goal is to collect the 5 other Frostbook pieces. They start with 1. Yeah, this is where the Frostbook comes in. So if you didn't know, the Frostbook is a book that allows you to destroy worlds if you have a strong spirit with it. And of course that requires the entire book. But since it was used, it broke into pieces, and yeah. Each Frostbook piece would give the player a stat buff, such as higher movement speed or more stamina. I mean, that's decent, I guess. Can't really say anything to that. The antagonist, because of course you have to have an enemy or something. The antagonist itself will be the leader of a sort of intelligent creature group, which already has 5 of the 6 Frostbook pieces, and they hid 4 of those behind large boss creatures that they already tamed. And yeah, just the player has to defeat those bosses and try to collect the Frostbook pieces before the antagonist group hunts them down. Every around 2 to 3 days they will just appear and start chasing the player, which is, I mean, I think it's a cool mechanic. The player can defeat them in the early game, so they must escape by running away and hiding. So it's like you're not powerful enough to really handle them, so you must run away. And then in the later game, when you have more powerful creatures, you can actually defeat them, which will be an interesting thing, I think, maybe? So you can just slide down hills and that accelerates you. So it should be a bit easier. Of course, the enemies won't be able to slide down, so you can actually escape that way much easier. In the end game, when you have 5 out of 6 Frostbook pieces, the player will be strong enough to tame larger creatures, which they can use to defeat the main antagonist and collect the last Frostbook piece. The boss fight would change based on the player's tamed creature being either a flying or a ground creature. So like, I imagine the main antagonist would have a large like dragon or something like that. So if the player has a smaller ground creature, then it's not going to start flying because that would be unfair against the player, obviously. And also the dragon can't really kill a ground creature without being on the ground, I guess. Okay, unless it can do the flame thing. Yeah, so this is basically the entire idea. It would have procedural world generation, of course. And yeah, here's the first question. Should it be third person or first person? It's a big question because it doesn't really matter. Like both of them would work. So I mean, third person is like better for environmental exploration because it gives a higher field of view. I mean, yeah, the camera's farther away from the player, and yeah, it just gives more field of view. However, it would take more work with animations, the player 3D model, which is bad. I really don't want to sculpt humans because that's hard. I don't have to sculpt them, but like 3D modeling a proper human isn't really nice. I don't really like doing it, especially the animations. Just, I don't want to use mixamo animations because that's just boring and no, probably overused as well. Because in the Unity project, I started making a procedural character animation for like the full body. I would probably have to finish that for this, and that would take a really long time. In first person, however, I would only have to animate hands and arms, which is just simple IK. And that shouldn't be that bad to do, I think. Of course, first person has better immersion as well. Let's get back to third person. It could have a potentially cooler looking player movement. I mean, sure. It's probably easier to control for an average person. I mean, yes. You have like stuff like GTA, Red Dead Redemption. Those are all third person games. They are quite easy to control, honestly. However, I prefer first person controls, but it's just my personal taste. In third person, you could have the potential of peeking around objects without being seen. That's bad game design wise, but good for the player, because then they can look around the corner without being in danger. But that would kind of honestly defeat the purpose of hiding in the first place. You already, well, not quite, but I don't think it's that nice to have. It would be more typical for the genre. There's a question mark there because I have no clue. I assume it is, but then we have stuff like Minecraft, which is sort of similar, I guess. More movement work than camera work. I mean, yeah. Camera is just a simple camera follow, while the movement can be insanely complicated. Except in the first person, a lot of people make first person player movement. And it's not that hard to get right, especially because you don't have to care about where like how the player actually looks like when it's moving. This part could be easier. It could be an interesting twist for the survival genre. That should be a question mark here because I have no clue if a lot of first-person games like this exist. Should really look into that. If anyone has some suggestions for games that are similar to this, third person and first person, then please let me know. I would love to see them or play them, maybe. Player movement could be less scuffed, yeah. So this is the first question. Should I pick third person or first person? I'm leaning towards first person, as it's less work, obviously. And I just like first person more in general. I would love to hear your opinions on this. And the second question is just terrain generation. We have two techniques for this, marching cubes or height map terrain. Height map terrain is way easier to do, but it's less realistic, I guess. I mean, it's less unique. That's probably the better word. So in marching cubes, you can have overhangs and stuff because it just works like that. It uses 3D noise and stuff. Height map terrain uses 2D noise, so it can only go up and down. But that just makes it real simple, which is great. So it can be maybe more realistic because you can have higher detail, which is nice. And I mean, overhangs are quite rare in real life. Maybe, not quite sure. For AI, for like the enemy AI and stuff, it would be probably easier to navigate, as it would be more flat. It would be easier to make, faster to generate, and more performant as it uses less vertices. Because it's faster to generate, world size could be larger. I haven't talked about this, but the world size wouldn't be infinite. There would be a set size for it. And it would just be generated when you first create the world, and there, it's done. This is mostly done so I can spawn all the structures into that full map, and then you would have to explore the map to actually find those. Or like the 4 large boss creatures that have the Frostbook bases and stuff. And maybe even the antagonist base, if I were to make that. It's probably easier to make an LOD system for it. I mean, yeah, because it's just a big plane that's subdivided. You can just unsubdivide and boom, you have an LOD system. Large mountains with huge cliffs are out of the question. I mean, have you seen height map terrain with like a large cliff, like a sudden one? It usually looks terrible. Mostly because it just lacks the vertices. You can fix it with tessellation, however, tessellation is not supported by Godot yet. And hopefully it will be in the future, so I'll keep it there. For marching cubes, could be harder for the AI to not navigate, doesn't matter really. It could be hard, it's definitely harder to make, slower to generate and less performant, as it uses way more vertices. I have no clue how much Godot likes stuff like that. So maybe it would be fine, maybe it wouldn't. It would have potential for digging in the terrain, which could be used for traps and tunnels. I would like to have this mechanic. It's probably not necessary and probably overcomplicates the game. But I mean, it could be cool. But also, that has a side effect of making some creatures cheesable by just hiding in a small tunnel. So it would be chased by something and you would hide in a tunnel. Great. All the hiding mechanics of the game just immediately obliterated from that. Amazing. Marching cubes also most of the time have some sort of floating islands / rocks. It's just a side effect of 3D noise. That also complicates a lot of stuff if you want to remove that. And overhangs can complicate foliage spawning. So in the past, what I've done is I just casted a bunch of rays downwards from the sky, and wherever it hit, it would spawn foliage there. Now if there's an overhang, the overhang will block any foliage spawning underneath it. I would have to make a completely new foliage spawning system, which, I mean, it would probably not be that hard, but like, I don't really want to do that. Yeah, this is the second question. I Again, height map terrain is just simply way too easy to make compared to marching cubes. But marching cubes is so much more interesting. They start experimenting with height map terrain first, well, because it barely needs any work, especially with Godot's built-in noise stuff. So I will start with that probably next week. And if I don't like it, then I might switch to marching cubes. Not quite sure yet. So thanks for watching. I'll be back next week, hopefully with some sort of terrain stuff, or maybe player movement. I don't know. Hope you found this game idea interesting. Let me know your opinions on all of these, and yeah, see you later.